Welcome back. It's time for Customers Who Click. Today's guest is Drew Hemmel, the founder and CEO of PCR, a D2C agency focused heavily on the use of email and SMS to grow their clients' businesses. Today, we're going to be exploring SMS quite a bit and the impact that it's starting to have in the D2C space, as despite it being quite an old channel, it's only recently come to the forefront of attention for a lot of marketers. We're also going to delve into marketing automation, but particularly how you should be constantly optimizing it to improve performance and crucially not see that performance drop that we normally see occur over time. Let's get Drew on now to explain how SMS and marketing automation flows can be of use to your business as well. Hi, Drew. Thanks for joining me today. Can you really quickly introduce yourself, a bit of your background and kind of how you've got to where you are today?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thanks for having me on. So I founded PCR 14 years ago. At the time, taught myself web design, read SEO for dummies, and was kind of off to the races. And I think over time we had a couple inflection points where we really had to decide: do we become a jack of all trades, or do we hone in on more of a specialization? And I think with digital, we decided to go the specialization route just as rapidly as things were changing. And our entry, I'd say, into kind of like the owned audience, like conversion rate optimization, inbound marketing, and things of that nature, was with HubSpot about a decade ago. And that allowed us, I think, to control a little bit more in this like chaotic world of digital. Google was coming out with algorithm updates for SEO, Facebook, kind of making changes. And so we really focused on the owned audience, and that started with our client's website all the way through to email marketing and SMS. And then about 2 years ago, there's no better place, I think, to do that than e-commerce, because you can control every transaction and really understand the user journey. And so we became Klaviyo Platinum partners and working with a really robust kind of set of clients, and food and beverage to fashion apparel, but high growth D2C brands looking to drive higher conversion, higher lifetime value, and things of that nature, kind of through their own marketing channels. So it's been fun and continues to change still, almost on a daily basis, it seems like.
Yeah, absolutely. But I know what you mean. I mean, I've always been in kind of this sort of space as well. So email marketing, website optimization, never really touched on SEO and things because partly because it wasn't interesting to me, but also I think maybe my first experiences of it were like, we need to do all this work and then, oh wow, Google's just changed the rules completely. We've got to scrap all this and now we've got to do this.
Yeah.
And, potentially the company I was at the time wasn't doing things in the best way. And so, the Google updates were quite punishing for them. But I just decided I preferred this optimization side. So what are you kind of finding is the biggest contributor to growth for your clients at the moment?
SMS has been a huge channel. I know we're going to touch on that a lot in this episode. I think just base level optimization of flows, that is making money while you sleep. And I think if you can effectively get them into the funnel and optimize that experience, then it can be an incredible revenue driver, along with, the email as a whole. And then we're just seeing for whatever reason, a lot of clients, not necessarily, they focus so much on, their ads and the creative and the different channels or what influencer they're going to partner with. But often the website itself is pretty neglected. And so, boosting conversion rate, even by 0.5%, can result in, millions of dollars in additional revenue. And so that's been, the three primary drivers that we're seeing as a lot of, kind of growth for our clients.
Yeah, we'll touch on those in a bit more detail. Just on the, actually, let's go into them now. Why don't we just start? Let's just start with SMS. Particularly as SMS it's definitely become a much bigger thing recently. I literally feel like in the last 3-4 months, the amount of noise about SMS has grown drastically. So, like how are you using SMS for your clients? What would you say is kind of a key learning or a key kind of strategy with them?
Yeah, I think one, if you take a step back on why, it's a confluence of a lot of different factors. I think people getting more and more nervous with the email updates, both on Apple and I think is really having everyone look at, okay, what are other channels that we can leverage to be able to communicate effectively with our clients. And then two, I think it's just the consumer's comfort level and the ability. I think it was almost a Trojan horse for some brands where if you wanted to know when your shipment was going to be there, delivery was going to be made, or that they processed your order, to be able to get that in a quick text was really valuable. And so they became more and more comfortable with it. And then, I think that the other component is just you look at how many different companies are now offering that SMS as a primary kind of feature. You look at Klaviyo, you look at Attentive, you look at PostScript. There's a lot of people in the space, so the cost has gone down pretty significantly, for brands as well. And so, I think that's why it's starting to be, becoming a lot more, like you said, buzzworthy and a lot of people talking about it. And then to answer your question, we're seeing it really be effective as a split test on what you would normally send as an email. Why don't we run, some experiments and do that with SMS instead, and be able to run those experiments in real time? And what we're seeing is as high as like 20 to 30% lift in revenue just by onboarding, SMS as a channel in addition to, their email marketing efforts. And so anything I think that you send out via email right now, I think you can look at, could this be a text message? And if it is, what would that look like? Not treating it apples to apples necessarily, but it's pretty close. And so we do that with welcome series. We do that with shopping cart abandonment. We do that with campaign sends. And then we just run the experiment side by side to see like how effective is it. And what we're seeing is it can be incredibly effective, as a, an overall channel, for brands to be able to drive that growth. And the cool thing about it is it doesn't require a huge lift to figure it out. You want to obviously nail consent first and foremost. And then you can, run the experiments. If you have a tool like, kind of Klaviyo, which has done a lot to roll out SMS as a product feature, you could just do a split test. Hey, let's send this one email to 50% of the people, and then the other 50% are going to get an SMS. What is the overall impact on, kind of revenue and engagement and things like that too. So I don't think you have to have like a wholesale, just, bite off small, pieces of it and then, let the data tell you, for your brand, how effective it is, actually as a channel.
Yeah. I like that. I think it's important to kind of drip feed it in especially if you've never used it.
Yeah.
It can be quite daunting to have this new communications channel and view it as just a new channel separately. Yeah. And then you're thinking, well, now we've got to build out all our flows with SMS. And then it's, well, how does that interact with email and all that stuff? I did actually work on that with a company a couple of years ago, where we were basically looking at what would be our ideal flow in terms of email and SMS. When should we send an email? When should we follow up with an SMS and all that? But then we also started adding in logic to say, well, if this person's not subscribed to email, then this is the SMS flow that they should receive.
Yeah.
And likewise with email, if they're not subscribed to SMS, we've got to make sure they get all the right content in email.
Yeah.
And then direct mail was also in there, but that was a whole different issue.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's really good to drop it in there. And I don't remember exactly, but I remember the feeling when I first started getting those text messages, which were, your delivery is going to be within the next hour, or something. And as a consumer, you're thinking, this is great, right? Because previously, and in fact, it does still happen where you get that email saying, it starts off with, it's going to be delivered on this date. And then you'll get an email a few days before saying, just confirming we will deliver on this date. Yeah. And then you get the email the day before, which says, great, your delivery slot is 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. And you're like, this is pointless. You might as well not give me any updates, because that doesn't really help me.
Well, especially too, I think because we for a long time, I would get stuff from Amazon. But now it's like everything I am very comfortable with. I get, I know you had, someone from Olipop on, it's the same thing. It's like, you don't want that sitting, especially I live in Florida, sitting out in the sun all day. And so to be able to get the real time, know when it's outside, and be able to go pick it up. Or I have ButcherBox, which is the, direct to consumer meat delivery. It's stored in dry ice, but it can only be out there so long, along with like my coffee and things like that. So I think the real time availability of the communication and know that it's there and get the alert, and then I can go outside and or stop by the house to be able to pick it up is extremely convenient versus email, and have almost like the cable guy type of time frame of like 8 a.m. 7 p.m. isn't very helpful.
Yeah, exactly. So what was number 2? Email automations and flows, right?
Yeah.
So you mentioned like optimizing, right? But what would you say is, it's not what you're optimizing to, but what's the general like idea behind this optimization? What would you say is the direction that's working for you guys really well?
Yeah, I think foundationally, and each brand's going to be a little bit different in terms of where they're at in their journey. But there's the 4 or 5 core flows that I think you really want to focus on, and that's your welcome series, shopping cart abandonment, browse abandonment, post purchase flow, like a thank you, and then a customer win back. And those primarily drive like 80% of your flow revenue. So nailing those, I think, is incredibly important to get right. And I think a lot of times brands get a little confused where they feel like, oh, we don't want to over communicate. But what we've seen is, with those 5 core flows, you could have like 3 or 5 emails in that sequence without really having a negative impact in unsubscribe or, overall engagement. And so, and not try and, propose on the first date, too. And I think keeping that, kind of logic in mind. And so, the welcome series, especially, we find to be really, really successful as like introduction to the brand, a little bit of the founder story, who you are. And then on that second email, you could start to do more of, here are our best sellers. Obviously, if you had a discount code or something like that, you want to reference it all the way through. And so getting that, I think, is a key component. And what's really cool is Klaviyo has a lot of information. There's a lot of content available to be able to reference. I also recommend signing up for brands that you admire, you think do a good job marketing, and just go through the whole entire user journey and take notes and figure out what you like, what you don't, figure out ways to be able to apply that. And then I think then you get more segmentation is what's going to drive higher and higher engagement. So we do experiments where for shopping cart abandonment, we will segment that out of brand new customers versus previous customers. And just all you do is change out a little bit of the subject line, maybe some of the copy, but it just makes it more personalized and relevant, to the user. And we do see significant revenue, significant engagement, be able to be increased as well. But again, don't put cart before the horse. Just nail, first get that, kind of in place. And then you can start doing, tests. Segments usually is going to be really effective. And then you can go down subject lines, kind of content itself, experiment with, adding SMS versus email and some of these flows to see how effective it is. But we find like, I love that because once you get it right and you kind of nail it, the optimization obviously helps, but that really sees like a big increase in overall revenue. And the great thing about it is it's going to positively impact every one of your channels, from your Facebook marketing to Google to SEO to, kind of organic social or, influencers or things like that too. So, that is a, kind of key component. And then I think the next step with email is, again, kind of going into the segmentation, not just sending your newsletter or your weekly, kind of, email out to the same exact, kind of group. Start thinking about like, who are your VIPs, who are your engaged contacts, who are your unengaged, and if you can start to segment that within your campaign sends and differentiate a little bit, it can have a really positive impact as well on your revenue and your overall engagement. So I think getting the baseline in place first. And then, the experimentation that we often run is through segments, and then, through, kind of the content itself in the form of subject line or, content within the email.
Yeah. And I think on the cart abandonment, for example, it's quite a simple segmentation, isn't it? You're basically changing the subject line and maybe the first line of copy to acknowledge that this person is either a returning customer or a new customer.
Yeah.
And it's as simple as that, and it will make a big difference. So and then with generally the flows, you can get them set up, right? Get the basic flows set up, and then start making little tweaks and optimizations. And some of those segmentation ideas, around in newsletters and things, don't have to be. You don't have to be thinking, how do I make sure I'm personalizing this to the point where I've got the exact right product for this person in front of them? Yeah. It could just be as simple as saying, we know this person's male, this person's female. We know this person has ordered these sort of products before, whereas these people order these other products. Obviously, depending on the business, it becomes easier or a bit more difficult. But, Butcher Box, for example, they might even ask you at the start, do you want beef, chicken, lamb, right? Mm-hmm. And if you say no lamb, then it's a really simple segmentation that you've told them as well, right? They don't have to think about it at all. They've literally just got to say, don't bother sending this guy lamb recipes or lamb product ideas. And it's simple things like that, right? That make a big difference and people notice.
Yeah.
Or more importantly, I think they notice the opposite. When that segmentation is not there, I think that's actually what people notice and think, well, this isn't a great email. Whereas when the email's right, it's just right, cool, this is an email, cool, good, thanks.
Yeah, because as a end user, you're getting hundreds and hundreds of emails a day, and so if it's not, so for me, it's always around like how personalized can you make it and how contextual, and a lot of that can be drivers from their digital behavior. So as simple as like unengaged and engaged. Someone that opens every email or is clicking on it versus someone that hasn't read or clicked on an email in 3 months. Like that's really valuable information to be able to know and maybe not treat them the same. Then there's a lot of the qualitative stuff that they can answer on the front end for your Butcher Box example. To be able to do that. And then there's like the transactional level of like, we have a client that has a really large subscription, kind of base. It's a ready to drink, kind of beverage. And, for them, they were treating the person that purchased at one time exactly the same as the person that had been a subscriber for 3 years. And so, just changing out some of the data around, even VIPs and doing like a little bit of the surprise and delight, kind of aspects of maybe giving them, a free, creamer as part of the drink, just as a, kind of a thank you. Or, a lot of people are doing, community based where you have like private Facebook groups or Slacks and allowing them to, kind of get into new releases or, have ideation on, new products that are coming out and things like that. And so, I think for us, that is, kind of the name of the game. And then I think, another idea when even just shopping cart abandonment, there's a lot of these review platforms now that have deep integrations with like a Klaviyo, a Kendo comes to mind that we recommend a lot of times. And, in that shopping cart abandonment flow, you could actually have it populate a review of that exact product that is, kind of popping up in the, kind of the email. So something simple like that, where not only is it the product, which usually everybody does, but the review talking about, if it's a subscription product, you could talk about, deliveries on time every single time. As soon as I'm, running out, it's, kind of refilled. If there's been, a delay, they over communicate. So, I think things like that, where it's like, how contextual, how personalized can you make that communication? And the more broad you go, the less specificity it has. And, I think the less relevant that it, ultimately becomes, which is going to have a negative impact on, the overall engagement.
Yeah, definitely. I like that idea of putting the review in there, in the cart abandonment, especially if you can make it about that product, then that's great. That should be really powerful. I mean, if you could capture the reason why that person abandoned and then give them a very specific review, that'd be incredible. Yeah. So, it might be just a normal, single purchase e-commerce site sort of thing, and someone's abandoned a product. But the reason they've abandoned it isn't because they've got questions about the product. It's they've got questions about delivery.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So if you could get people to just interact with something before they exit, which then says, oh, this person abandoned because they don't know what the returns policy is, then you could get that information in the email as well, and a review which says, yeah, never had any problems returning products.
Yep, exactly. And I think that's where, we record for that same client that I mentioned before, cancellation reasons. And a lot of it was, I had too much of the product. And so what we implemented was the ability through SMS actually to, we send them alert, hey, your package is going to be, kind of fulfilled in the next, few days. You can cancel, you could pause, you could gift it, because we noticed that a lot of times they were just not utilizing it. So giving them that flexibility, while it might sound counterintuitive to make it really easy for them to cancel or be able to pause a shipment, they actually show that it increases the lifetime value by 20 to 30% of that customer because you're giving them that flexibility on the front end.
Yeah. Well, on that exact example, well, not exact, different business, but the reason I stopped subscribing to a business was because they didn't give me that opportunity at all. The first thing I knew, because it was a weekly subscription. It's a food kit, HelloFresh. I think you guys have Blue Apron. Is it over there as well? Yeah. I literally just got the email one day which said, great, your recipes have been packed and they're on the way. I'm like, oh, I completely forgot. I didn't check the menu. Like, I haven't made these selections. So they just sent me a default selection. Yeah. And that really annoyed me. Yeah. Because I maybe it was me reading into it a bit much as a marketer, but I took that as we don't want people to cancel. Right. So we're not actually going to communicate with people. We're going to ship the product. We're going to take payment. We're going to ship the product. And that really annoyed me because I got recipes I didn't want, which meant I wasn't seeing the value of the product. But actually also, quite often I found that on the times where I did forget about the box, I struggled to use the recipes because I was, I had evening plans and I had things going on. Right. Which meant that actually each time I forgot it was more of a burden on me. I was like, okay, I have to use this food because otherwise it's going to go to waste. Yeah. But how do I use it when I've got dinner plans every day?
Yeah. Well, I think you just have to, it's at least over here, it's like the gym memberships are notorious for you have to drive almost to their corporate headquarters to be able to cancel, and they make you do it in person. They make it so difficult to be able to cancel. And I think that lack of transparency and making it easier for the consumer is just going to really have a negative impact long term. And so we like to get in front of it with our clients. I think consumers are becoming more and more comfortable with subscription, but still, then you're just like, oh, am I going to have loads and loads of this product that I'm not going to be able to use. And then if I go to cancel it, it's near impossible. And so, just being able to we now do it through a really easy text, and you can press 2 and just say, hey, I'd like to pause it this month. Make it super simple. And then, and it makes it a lot easier, and it kind of mitigates some of that friction that you would normally have, kind of otherwise. And that is just another easy way for text. We're not going into email or having to, log into your account, find your password and stuff like that. You could just, quickly, be able to pause it is really helpful.
Pause it, or just being able to shift it, right? Yeah. Just change the delivery date and say, I don't want to skip an entire month and have to wait, that long for it. But I know that I don't need it in a week's time when you're about to ship it to me. So can you push it back a week? That sort of thing is so helpful. I actually had another subscription that I forgot about because, doing my thing, checking out websites, signing up to things, free trials, whatever. So got a repeat order of that. Went to cancel it on the website, couldn't work it out in the dashboard. So I tried to contact customer support. And I think what they had was a contact form that once you filled it out, click submit, it opened up your email browser, your email app, which for Windows is almost always Outlook.
Yeah.
And it just kind of preloaded an email there for you, or an email with the email address and the subject line.
Oh my goodness.
So it was like, what have I filled in this contact form for? If you're then going to make me send an email and you're not giving me an email to send the email to, you're opening up the email thing that I don't use and trying to force me to send an email this way. So that's one where I'm not sure if they're deliberately trying to make it difficult or if somehow it's just got so messy with the tech team or something that, something got built and then it got changed to something else. And, I don't know, maybe it's some sort of mobile function that has accidentally got onto the desktop site.
Yeah. I think we come across a lot of like, what is the ideal tech stack to be able to use? And sometimes, we deal with like big legacy retailers that are trying to figure out their e-commerce and, these closed, kind of technologies that don't speak, well, with each other. That's why we're big advocates of Klaviyo, because it's all like open. And so, there's APIs for days to be able to kind of like make it a really seamless, kind of experience, be able to consolidate that data. We had a brand that had 8 different technologies communicating with the end customer. And so they couldn't really control, like I think we noticed there were 7 messages being sent out from purchase to the product actually being delivered. And we're like, that's a lot. And so, but they had no, kind of line of sight, kind of around that. And so with Klaviyo, we were able to centralize all that. And it's like one-click integration so that it could actually, control across customer service, across, kind of sales and marketing, SMS, email, all these, other channels too. And I think that's why I think there is a little bit of that disruption that can take place with some of these D2C, kind of brands versus like the large legacy, because for them to make those changes, it's so wieldy, to be able to do. And I've seen it on both sides. And so I think, sometimes it could be just technical debt, and they have the wrong, kind of platforms or systems. 2, they're just not thinking about user experience in the way that you and I are, kind of other, consumer forward, brands. But I think just that's the name of the game, is just make it simple, and make it very easy to be able to use and communicate. And I think it is going to pay huge dividends, in the long run.
Yeah, absolutely. So the third point you mentioned earlier was CRO, website optimization, right? So let's talk about that a little bit. Where do you advise people to start?
So, there's a similar theme. Again, it's kind of taking a step back and saying, what are the main objectives that you want your site to achieve? And a lot of times that's add product to cart and purchase, but there could be opt into email and be able to confirm them as a subscriber. Usually, there's just a few core kind of points that you want to get at, and then I think where we see the mistake is adding friction without even really being aware of it. And so a lot of low-hanging fruit that we always see on most sites, I would say at this point, is on the homepage itself. They're not spending very much time on there. That's their kind of landing spot to go to your product page, your collections page, your bestsellers, whatever it may be. And so, but you don't want to treat each user the same. There could be someone, again, brand new. So you really got to tell them the story and have the reviews and build in that credibility. But there could be someone that is purchasing the product for the 4th time and they just want to be able to quickly add it to the cart. And so one thing that we notice a lot of times is they just kind of treat everybody the same in that bucket. And what we want to look at is new versus returning, mobile versus desktop. What is the potential traffic source that they're, kind of coming from? And then have multiple paths for them to be able to take. And so something very small and easy to do is on your homepage, if you have products listed as your bestsellers, having it add to cart directly from the homepage, where I've seen it, where sometimes they click on it, they go to, a page that, talks about it, then they have to click on it again to add a cart. You just added 2 extra steps in a time where, we have the attention span of about a second grader, kind of online. And so making it simple to be able to quickly add that, have it in the cart is one easy thing to kind of get implemented. 2, the value of a search bar, even if you have like limited SKU count, say you only have like, we had a client that only had 8 products. And they're like, well, we don't really need search. They can find our products pretty easily. But what we've noticed is like still 30 to 40% of your traffic goes to that search bar because they might have found you through like an ad and they don't know the whole product set or they're not familiar with the brand. It's just easier. And it was like a wellness shot, kind of company. And so they had different ingredients and stuff like that too. So maybe they wanted to search by turmeric or ginger and not, and so we always say to implement that and make it pretty prominent on your site, because sometimes they might only have the little like magnifying glass and it's just not as intuitive. So make it a little more prominent. And we see conversion like 3 to 5x off search versus any other, kind of page on the site.
I've been looking at search a lot as well. It definitely comes across as something that a lot of websites just go, every website has a search bar. It's always in this spot or pretty much this spot. And that's it. That's where the thinking ends. But there's so much more you can do with it. And I've seen some really awesome search bars where not only will it will start to also suggest text based on what you've started to input. Right. Then once you've decided what your search term is, or once you've written enough of it, it will then actually show you products. And then it also gives you the ability to filter.
Yep.
So it gives you almost a full browsing experience, but within the search function. So it's really allowing that customer to really get to it without having to submit the search, then look at a page and go, well, no, this isn't quite what I wanted. Let's do a search again. You get that live update. So you can say, well, no, that's not what I meant. Go back. Let's try this keyword instead. And you get to see the new results. So there's some awesome stuff you can do with search now.
Yeah. And there's a lot of like tools and plugins that can handle a lot of that. But again, having it, I'm shocked how many brands didn't have search because they're like, oh, we don't have enough SKUs or it doesn't really make sense. Even just having it in place, I was like, that's an easy win. And then you can get more and more sophisticated based on, what you were saying and kind of like laying out as well. And it's a huge driver of conversion. It's significantly higher than almost anywhere else on the site that we see.
Yeah, absolutely. If someone engages with search, like you, I'm seeing 3, 4, 5 times conversion rates for those people because they're going to find what they're looking for a lot quicker.
Yeah.
But also what's really good is it's the research you get from it, right?
Yeah.
You get to see what people are searching for on your website.
Yeah.
And you get to see what are the most common terms. You get to see what terms are generating 0 results.
Right.
So for that, you might find that loads of people, let's go back to Butcher Box, for example. There are certain cuts of meat which have different names, right? It's the same cut of meat, but it would be called one thing in the US, one thing in the UK, another thing in maybe Canada or Australia, wherever, for all English speaking countries. So you might find that loads of people are searching for it with the wrong name for it and then not being shown any results.
Yeah.
And then you look into it and you go, oh, this is actually the same as that product. So when they search this, make sure that we show them this product because it's actually what they're looking for. Or probably even better, show them a product with that name.
Yeah. Well, it's like to your point, when we're doing like user research, there's obviously you can dive deep into Google Analytics and see bounce, exit, time on site, kind of all those things. You can extrapolate from new versus returning, but I like a lot of the qualitative stuff. So, a post-purchase, kind of exit survey can be incredibly valuable. What they're typing into search, to your point, can give you loads and loads of, kind of information. And I think the ability to have heat map tracking, whether that be, Crazy Egg or Hotjar or, any of those tools too, so that you can actually see a user on there trying to click on an image that's not clickable. And it's like, okay, and that happens enough. You can see that or see where there's significant drop off on the product page or homepage where maybe that's a really prominent call to action that you want them to see. And they're, 40% of users aren't even seeing it. And so there's these other angles too that you can, kind of look at that can help really have a huge impact and greatly inform your overall like conversion rate optimization strategy or just your website optimization strategy as you're, kind of thinking through those things too.
Absolutely. I quite like the Microsoft product, Clarity, I think it's called, which is...
Oh, I haven't used it. Yeah.
It's a heat map, click map session recordings, but it's just like, Hotjar. But one thing I've noticed there, which I don't know if I've noticed on Hotjar, is they also do rage clicks and dead clicks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I would have thought Hotjar would have.
Hotjar has the rage click. Kind of. Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, I know it does it in the. Hotjar does it in the session recording, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas I think Clarity will also do it on the click maps. So you can that's it. You can filter for sessions with rage clicks. Then you can filter for those rage clicks. So you can see literally on the heat map, the only clicks you can see are the ones they've considered rage clicks.
Oh, interesting.
So then you can see, right, what's not working. Where are people clicking, expecting it to do something? But then you also get dead clicks. Dead clicks is a little bit more, I'd say a little bit more work to analyze because, if you accidentally click on the screen, that gets counted as a dead click because it's a person clicking where there's nothing to click.
Right.
But what's important is if you're looking at some text, for example, right, you might have underlined a bit of text in a paragraph and people are clicking on that thinking it's a link.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So then you've got to think, well, is this actually should we make this a link or should we take off the underline and make sure people don't think it's a link?
Right. There's so much data available. It's like, it really, I think it overwhelms a lot of brands. And that's where I think the reason why people like you and I exist is making sense of some of that data that can help, kind of inform because, there is your email tool, there's customer service, CRM, Google Analytics, the heat map tracking, all the different, kind of aspects, along with just the Shopify data and things like that. So, I try and keep it as simple as, kind of possible. And so that we're equipping, the brands we work with of here's our insight and here's why. And then we'll track that against the metrics that we want to see lift. Ultimately, they all will rise the conversion rate, but we can't just isolate every single, for this winery brand we work with, we have 62 recommendations. And so we had to track each recommendation with the metric, and it could just be add to cart, it could be bounce rate, it could be, kind of a lot of, scrolling, kind of down the average order value, all these different things that we're looking at so that, it is all tides rise, all ships with conversion, but, we needed to isolate it on a metric by metric, task by task, kind of level too.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right. I think, a lot of people think there's so much to do, where to start, which data to look at. And I think you can just break it. You can break it down a bit. I tend to very quickly, early on, I'll start looking at obviously just the conversion funnel, but focusing on things like checkout completion rate or from add to cart to checkout start.
Yeah.
Because, there's much higher intent there. So if you can make an improvement there, you're going to see some decent conversions.
Yeah. Well, it's also too, it's just a lot of brands we work with just don't even have their Google Analytics configured properly. And that can just be, if you don't have the right data that's informing some of these insights, then you're kind of in a pretty bad position from the start. And so there are Shopify apps that will come in and kind of connect your GA, appropriately to, the Shopify store just to make sure that it's reporting, kind of correctly. There's a lot of inconsistencies we're seeing too from what's being reported on Facebook to what's reported on Google Analytics to what's reported on Shopify. So, I think looking at that to try and get that in place so that you have the right data at least to inform those insights is pretty critical. And I mean, I'd say only maybe 10 or 20% of the time of the brands that we're working with is their analytics configured in the right way. So you might want to start there, first and foremost of getting that, kind of configured and then, look at, the insights from it.
Yeah. Analytics is always going to be a difficult, time consuming, area to focus on.
Yeah.
But it needs to be done right. I remember someone posting on LinkedIn the other day, results of how did you hear about us survey?
Mm-hmm.
I think post-purchase, and it did not tie back to Google Analytics data.
Yeah.
Which was reporting, I think it was reporting heavily on PPC,
mm-hmm.
With maybe a bit of Facebook dropped in there, but loads of people were saying, Facebook, Instagram, a friend told me, all these things, but then the report was just PPC.
Yeah.
So, and I know you can't always trust what the customer says.
Right.
Because if I tell you about a product and you go look it up now, but you click on the ad,
yeah,
then yes, I told you about it, but you also clicked the Google ad. So the tracking is still right.
Right.
Yeah. So there's,
it's tough. It's the qualitative post-purchase, kind of exit survey, things like that can be really valuable. And I think also too, you just want to get a breakdown on site of like, what are the pages that are driving the most views and traffic, where maybe balance is significantly higher, things like that too, that you at least have some control over the variables, where, trying to interpret what the survey is telling you versus what Google Analytics is telling you, it can be really tricky. And, there's just always going to be a lot of variability based on what the customer is telling you and based on what's being reported. But even, for search, Google claims a lot because of like branded search and, kind of things like that. And even just delineating between branded and non-branded and, how effective that is. Because that can conflate a little bit of your overall, kind of marketing strategy until you figure out exactly what's what and what's going on there.
Yeah, definitely. I just want to touch on the post-purchase survey you mentioned. What sort of things are you asking there?
Yeah, so I think Inquire Labs is a really good. They have a great kind of tool, but a lot of it is how did you hear about us? Trying to do more of the post attribution, and then I think for us too, there's asking them kind of questions around like. What other products would they be interested in, or a little bit of like male versus kind of female, anything depending on what the brand is and what the product that can help us inform some of our communication strategy so that we can make it more personalized and relevant to them. Having them kind of opt into that communication so that then we can tailor that down the line. But the problem is you don't want to have like 3 or 4 questions. It's just going to really impact the conversion. Ideally, you have 1, maybe 2. And most of the brands that we work with, I think the thing that's going to be most informative is like, how did you hear about us? More than anything. And then we ask like more of the like demographic, kind of information so that they could opt into that communication down the line.
Yeah. I've done quite a lot with kind of 0-party data. So, just asking customers what they want, what their preferences are. Basically, how do we sell to you? How do I market to you? But I've done that a lot with the the pre-purchase kind of email capture, right? So here's a 10% discount. Answer a couple of questions, and then using that data to put them into flows. Some people will convert anyway. Some people drop into the flows and then convert, and we're seeing much higher conversion rates from those flows, even with just some basic kind of segmentation from that. Especially with like a lot of these updates now, we're not being able to track open rates as kind of effectively with a lot of the Apple updates and things like that. We have some clients that have are more health wellness kind of focused, and so you can ask questions around like, is it anxiety, is it depression, is it stress, is it what are these things, so that we can then customize a little bit of the follow up with the right products based on what their answers are. It can be really kind of helpful too, or like, why are they using the product, or why are they interested, so that we can start to contextualize that communication as well. And I think it can have not incremental, but an impact on conversion. But on the front end, if you just look at like the data capture, but the effectiveness in the marketing and the communication thereon after is really, really powerful, especially since we don't have as much of an accurate idea of like who's opening and then kind of engaging with the emails like we did just a few months ago. Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that. I think you mentioned like kind of wellness apps. There are obviously loads of apps that will ask you those questions, right? How old are you? They might do like how tall are you? What's your weight? What are you struggling with, or what's your goal at the moment? Ask you all these questions, and then they will tailor the in-app experience to you. But I've actually seen quite a lot where the communications aren't tailored. No. So it's obviously 2 very separate teams. You've got that product team, which is building the the actual product that you're using, you're consuming. And then they've just said to the email team, there's your connection, go build your emails, go do your thing. It's very separate. And there's so much data there you could be using to say, well, we know you're struggling with this. So here's some information that will help you. And then when you're ready, subscribe to the app and you'll get the kind of hands-on help or whatever.
It's a big challenge, honestly. I mean, I've definitely bitten off more than we can chew early days of we can collect all this data and we have 200 different data points on them. Isn't this great? And then for most brands, just even getting product bundling right and nailing that of if you bought this, you would like this is one thing. But because so much of that is qualitative and almost like a manual input, how to extrapolate around the branching logic of all the different ways that they could go, bundled with, their engagement, their transaction history, all this other stuff. It's not an easy thing to, be able to go through and tackle. And, I always try and simplify of what is going to move the needle the most. And what are we trying to accomplish? And then let's set up a hierarchy. Because if you try to do too much, you'd have and I've seen some brands have this of 200 different flows. If they do this, then this, and this. And then by the end of it, you're this whole thing is only going to 10 people. Is that, really as effective as you want it to be too?
I was slightly guilty of that the other day. And it got pointed out and I went, oh yeah, actually that's completely fair. We were doing a sunset flow for customers and asking why, saying you were interested in this product a little while ago, but you haven't made a purchase. We were just wondering why. Have people click an answer. And then I was saying, well, all right, cool. So based on their answer, we should then be putting them into the next email in the flow, basically, to say, here's some information about that.
Yeah.
And then it was explained to me, the guy just pointed out the number of people going through this flow and the number of people who would be receiving that email. And I was like, yeah, you're right. It's not worth us building out these emails.
Right.
Because the time could be spent on the welcome journey or the cart abandonment where, the 5 hours it's going to take to build that email. If we put 5 hours into cart abandonment instead, that's going to generate 100 times more revenue, probably more.
I think we had the same meeting because I had this on Friday where I did the same thing. I'm ashamed to admit I spent 5 hours and it was a client of ours that was in apparel. They had a database of 70,000 plus that had not engaged in any kind of email correspondence in 6 months plus, some even years. I'm all right, so we're going to separate purchaser, non-purchaser. Okay, purchaser, we're going to 50% of people buy this product. They often buy this. And I had this whole thing built out and my retention strategist looks at me and goes, our base level open rate on these emails that we've seen with other clients is 2%. So yes, it's 70,000 people, but we're going to have 1,400 people open this email. And then you've got all these segments. And she said the same thing, but they don't have the third series and their welcome series optimized. We need to spend our time and energy there. I was like, you're right. I just wasted a lot of time. It was almost like an ego boost of how complicated I made it and figured it out.
You kind of you get really sucked into it at times. And then someone points the numbers at you and you're like, it's not actually worth doing this effort. Because even if you built out all those segments and you managed to get a 10% click-through rate instead of a 2% click-through rate, the number of people who have clicked is, 140. And then you've got your on-site conversion rate. So if that is an amazing 10%, that's 14 people have purchased. So yeah, you kind of break it down and you realize you don't have to really go into that.
No, I had my data analyst pulling all this stuff in Google Analytics and, purchase window and all this stuff. And then I finally was like, wow, I just kind of wasted my time, but, a few other people's too.
Cool. So just before we finish, I just want to ask, is there anyone in the D2C marketing space that you'd want to go for lunch with?
Oh, interesting. Let's see. There's a few that come to mind. I think Webb Smith's done a really great job with 2PM. He's the CMO of Mizzen & Main. So he's got a really interesting, I think, point of view around where the market is going and is pretty insightful, I think, on like, kind of consumer trends and things like that. Nick Sharma is like a guy that's always, kind of out and about. We're in Lean Lux together, this like private group, Slack group that Paul Mumford puts together that is really, really valuable, like a bunch of D2C, kind of marketers and stuff like that. So I respect how he thinks about launching brands and thinking about branding and D2C specifically, kind of a little bit more holistically. And then I have a couple friends that I'm fortunate to, from, Kat Cole, who does I think a really good job. She was, got an incredible story. She was like a Hooters waitress, came the CEO, and then also was the CEO of Focus Brands. And then, so, there's a few people that I've learned a lot from, kind of in the space that, Twitter is just like such a treasure trove of information on what, people are releasing these days. But yeah, those are some people that, kind of come to mind that I've either like passively followed or, kind of been connected with through, other communities or events and things like that.
Cool. Yeah, sounds good. And just finally, what about a couple of marketing tools? So maybe a couple of tools that you use, not necessarily every day, but are, the core ones for you, I suppose.
Yeah. So Klaviyo's, I think, first and foremost, one of the primary tools that I use, kind of primarily. I'm a big advocate, whether it be a Hotjar or Crazy Egg, as well. We're using that, I'd say, like, kind of every day. And then, I'm a big advocate of what Akendo is doing in the, the review space, kind of as well. I think they have the deepest integration in Klaviyo, and then also too, a lot of these review apps people don't realize can really negatively impact site speed. And so the way that they've configured the technical back setup, it has no impact on site speed whatsoever. So
that's good.
I really like them. And then, the deep integration with Klaviyo, you can build segments based on, 5-star reviews or even like what they said in the review. So you could start sending out, segmentation and emails, based on that feedback too. So those are probably like the three that I, tend to find myself, going to, kind of time and time again.
Yeah. Yeah, it's cool. Yeah, I'm using Akendo with a client. So I just love the amount of information you can capture in a review. If you get someone to fill out completely, it's just incredible. It looks like it's just an incredible amount of information, including social login as well for that verification. So I think that's really cool.
And they have it now too, where it's based on most reviews. They send it like through a window of when it's been fulfilled, but they can actually do it when it's been delivered. So you could like trigger, 2 to 3 days of a review request upon delivery, which can be a little bit more exact, too, which is nice. So there's some cool features of it that I like a lot. So we typically recommend to, kind of our clients.
Yeah, cool. All right. This has been awesome stuff. Thank you so much, Drew.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate it. Well,
definitely time to go back and review your marketing automation, I think. Loads of great advice from Drew there. One idea I particularly like is integrating reviews into the abandoned cart flow so you can show off how great your product is to someone who clearly has interest in it but didn't quite pull the trigger. Also, letting your customers manage their subscription via text, as Eli also mentioned, is a game changer. Interaction rates with SMS are so high. Your customers are more guaranteed to respond to them, especially when the content is really important, such as, managing their subscription. If you'd like to reach out to Drew, you can find him on LinkedIn. Any other podcast questions, feedback, guest requests, please send them over to will@customerswhoclick.com or reach out to me on LinkedIn. Next up, I've got Chris Mandarino joining me. We're going to be talking about his company, Life Fuel, and how the customer experience is so important to their growth. But until then, keep those customers clicking.